Let's get into Mike Conley and the Utah Jazz while we talk NBA free agency here on the Monty Show. It has been a crazy weekend of rumors. Sports Illustrated is reporting that Mike Conley and your Utah Jazz have agreed to a 3-year, $60 million deal. Now, frankly, I have asked a lot of people if they know or have they heard about this, and everybody that I know in the NBA has basically said they have not gotten confirmation that that is the case. It was the understanding of most people around the NBA that the Utah Jazz were going to offer Mike Conley a significant amount of money. Most people peg that at 3 years and $75 million. So frankly, everybody I spoke to this weekend was surprised that it was only $60 million. Because you do the math, take your socks off and count, that's $20 million a year, which is far, far below market value for point guards at this moment. Now, having said that, we haven't seen a mega point guard contract signed at this point. When you look at the big names, Chris Paul, who opted out with Phoenix over the weekend, Kyle Lowry, who is going to probably wind up with the Heat, and you have Mike Conley. I mean, those are probably, I mean, I don't know what you think, Jake, but those are probably your three biggest point guards on the market at this point.
Yeah,
right?
those are going to be your biggest names. I mean, obviously there's a pretty good, how should we say, a melting pot of other guys who are not stars in the league yet, but who are productive players. But those are going to be the three front runners, the three headlining names. And I think that, the Utah Jazz, as we've told you guys so many times on this show, are in a position where, the cap hasn't been their friend. But I will say, so far they've done a pretty damn good job opening up some space and putting themselves in a position where they can at least, offer Mike Conley a reasonable amount of money and not be like, embarrassingly under what other teams are going to offer him. Now, with that said, I still think this all hinges on how bad Mike Conley wants to come back to Utah. If this is a situation where he wants to be a Jazz man and this is where he wants to play, then the deal is going to get done at 3 years and $20 million. If Mike Conley's out for the bag, then he's probably not going to be, a Jazz man. I think it's difficult, though, if you're the Jazz, to sit here and feel like, hey, we moved on from Favors. We moved down in the draft. We did really well in the draft in what we told you they did, getting Butler. And I think overall, they've worked really hard to be in a position to re-sign Mike Conley. I mean, everything points to, and again, you're the one who has, your sources and everything telling you this, but like, everything points to they're working hard to re-sign Mike Conley. And I just don't think there's a scenario where they can get to that $75 million number. That just is an egregious amount of money for where they're at with the cap. So, yeah.
Well, in what I've been hearing for several weeks now since the Jazz lost and got knocked out of the playoffs is that, Mike Conley expected to hear from several teams. Obviously, he expected to hear from the Utah Jazz, so I don't think anybody's surprised that there are these rumors out there. But I also think that there's a lot of people, Jake, who are surprised that the Knicks have not been more aggressive in their pursuit of Mike Conley. But we're very early. Free agency starts today. So it's not as though, Mike Conley is, not in demand. And by the way, I think his agent probably is well aware or has probably had substantive conversations with people already. Mm-hmm. But I think, I hear this rumor at 3 years and $60 million. I was shocked. At $20 million a season, it is a substantial pay cut for Mike Conley. And it is going to be substantially under what the bigger stars in the league get. Now, is Mike Conley on the level of a Kawhi Leonard? Well, certainly not. They're at different points in their career, and Kawhi's going to get a massive deal from the Clippers. So I don't think Conley should be looking for a $30 to $40 million deal. But Mike Conley certainly is on par with guys like Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, the top point guards that are available on the market. And I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I think Mike Conley is in that group, in that conversation.
Yeah, 100%. He's definitely in the group and in a comparable without a doubt. I think, no matter what you think about Mike Conley's ability to stay healthy, I think at the end of the day, all these guys have pros and cons. And I think the biggest thing for any team looking at this pool of point guards at their age, because let's face it, they're all older players, right? Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, and Mike Conley are all older veteran players who would ideally be added to a team that needed one more guy to make a finals run. And so, for the Knicks, I look at them and I'm like, all right, they're not that team. They're a team that still has a lot of work left to do. Yes, did they make the playoffs? Yes, they did. Did they get bounced really early? Yes, they did. So they're really not close to being a championship caliber team right now. So for me, if Mike Conley, let's say, were to go to the Knicks, that's a money grab. That's just him saying, hey, I want to get paid, and the Knicks are able to offer me the absolute most money. Now, my suspicion is, and this is just my opinion, don't have facts behind this, just kind of what I'm reading based on what I see. My suspicion is that it's a little bit of both for Mike Conley. I don't think that Mike Conley's in a place where he wants to take the bag and go play for the Orlando Magic. However, I also think he wants to get paid a decent amount and be on a decent team. So it's that balance.
Yeah, and I have trouble believing that Mike Conley's just going to sign a 3-year, $60 million deal with the Jazz. I mean, I know for a fact, and I say fact, I have heard repeatedly that the Dallas Mavericks were going to be offering him a 4th year to make sure that they got his signature on an offer sheet because nobody was going 4 years with Mike Conley. Are you telling me that Mike Conley's not going to go out and sign an offer sheet with somebody? And that's the one thing I would caution you on when we talk NBA free agency and we talk about the mechanics and the hows of and whys of these deals. I don't believe that Mike Conley's just going to go back and directly sign with the Utah Jazz. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem smart by Mike Conley. If he signed a 3-year, $60 million deal, Mike Conley, left money on the table and is negotiating against himself, which is not the way that business has ever been done in the NBA. My guess is that Mike Conley goes out to the market, signs an offer sheet, and the Jazz wind up matching that, and Mike Conley's thrilled to be back in Salt Lake City. That's my guess.
Yeah.
I would be shocked. And again, I would just be stunned if Mike Conley outright re-signed with the Jazz for what amounts to about a $15 to $20 million discount. I mean, who's giving $15 to $20 million discounts in the NBA these days?
Not many.
I mean, it's unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely unheard of. And for me, I guess where I go with this Mike Conley conversation is, how valuable is Mike Conley to the Utah Jazz? I think he's pretty valuable.
Yeah.
Again, it's not like you can just put this money back in your pocket and spend it. That's not how the situation works. And, again, I would just say there were so many people on YouTube commenting this weekend about sign and trade him. Well, the Jazz would be hard-pressed to do that because you're hard-capped at that point. So it is, which you already are, I would remind you, because you're on the luxury tax line. That's why the Derek Favors trade was so significant. But I just think at the end of the day, I would guess that Mike Conley ends up with the Jazz.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's going to be for $60 million. If it is, my God, that's a great deal for the Jazz. And listen, $20 million in this day and age is still a ton of money. That is rest of your life money, and I totally understand that based on what Mike's made previously. That's a nice payday.
Yeah.
Why would you leave at this point in your career when you have 2, maybe 3 years left? You're 34 years old. Why would you leave 15 to 20? And my guess is it's $15 to $17 million. Somebody would pay him $25, $26 million a year. Why would you leave that money on the table at this stage of your career? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that nobody else, and I not that I'm trying to tell you, hey, I'm a big deal. I know some pretty well-placed people. And if those people can't confirm that report, it's probably not that accurate. With all due respect to Sports Illustrated, whatever. I'm just telling you, I would be skeptical that it's $60 million.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, in the NBA specifically, players want to get paid, and I think that Mike Conley, you're right. At this point in his career, it would be very surprising to me that he would leave that money on the table. But again, I think when the Jazz are selling this to him, I think the selling point is, hey man, we're trying to bring you back. No, we can't offer you $75 million, but we can offer you 60, and we can offer you a legitimate path to the NBA Finals. And I think that really, that's the discussion, right? That's the discussion. They're going to try and sell that to Mike Conley, that way. But I think if
Yeah.
you're Mike Conley,
Yeah.
you're sitting here saying, okay, yes, I do want to get paid, but then secondly, I want to win a championship because he has not won a championship yet. And I think that for Mike Conley and for Chris Paul, and that's the difference between Kyle Lowry and these two guys. Kyle Lowry's won, so the pressure's off of him. He's just trying to find a good situation. Whereas Chris Paul and Mike Conley, more so Chris Paul, but both of them together are trying to win their championship before they're done playing in the NBA.
Yeah.
So to me, Conley going to the Knicks makes absolutely no sense. Conley going to the Dallas Mavericks, to me, still doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense outside of the fact that they're going to pay him the fourth year.
But see, here's the other thing, and this is Mr. Mitch's question yesterday. And Mr. Mitch, good to see you again. Missed you, buddy. Mr. Mitch was asking me how much I value in terms of the NBA. Like how much do I value Salt Lake City and the Utah Jazz? Well, if I'm Mike Conley, I value it highly. I know the system. I know Quinn Snyder. I love playing with Donovan Mitchell. Like I'm home. This is comfort for me. And in the grand sense, the broader terms, well, I know that Phoenix is going to spend a bunch of money this offseason. They've made that pretty clear. I know the Lakers and the Clippers. The Lakers are probably out of the money spending market now. They don't need a point guard. So that's one team that was linked to Mike Conley that's out of the game. The Clippers need a point guard, and the Dallas Mavericks need a point guard. And I know that if I am Mike Conley and I go to Dallas, I'm comfortable in Dallas. I'm going to get good money in Dallas. I'm going to play with a superstar in Luka Doncic in Dallas. The question is, who's more likely amongst his suitors to win a championship? And I don't think any of them are. With all due respect to the Utah Jazz, if you run this back this year, how should we and why would we and how would we make the argument that you're a championship contender in Salt Lake? And this is what a lot of people didn't want to talk about. I don't believe that if you bring Mike Conley back, because I don't know what you do at backup center. I mean, you have options. None of them are great. I don't know that any of them make you better than Derek Favors made you. I understand why you made the Favors trade. I think it was absolutely unbelievable. Great trade. But you're not better this year than you were last year. Yeah. Sitting here today, there's not going to be some big free agent splash that you're going to sign. You don't have the cap space to do that. So are you better than Dallas? I don't know. Ask me in 72 hours when we know what free agency looks like. Are you better than the Clippers? Hell no, you're not better than the Clippers. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Are you better than the Lakers? I don't know. I happen to think that Russell Westbrook will change his game to fit in with LeBron and AD, and I think they're a championship contender right now today. I thought that same thing before they went and made the Russell Westbrook deal.
And by the way, all the rumors about a lot of guys wanting to take less money to go and chase a ring with them.
And that was going to be my next point, is that the Lakers have no money to spend. They're in a very similar situation as the Utah Jazz. But guess what? When you hear guys like DeMar DeRozan wanting to take far less money to win a championship with the Lakers, now you're starting to understand that there's a lot of guys. And by the way, tell me I have no sources and I don't know what I'm talking about. Back me up on this, and I think people will. I told you last week the Lakers were hard after Rudy Gay.
Yeah.
Well, guess who popped up in the news this weekend? Rudy Gay wants to take a veteran minimum deal to sign with the LA Lakers for a championship.
Yeah, man. I mean, you definitely said that last week, and I think
and I'm good looking.
Well, that's debatable, but
Okay. Anyway, my point is that I think you're not in that position. You would love to have Rudy Gay on this Jazz team.
Absolutely.
I think. Look at Chris Paul's situation. I look at the Phoenix Suns as an organization that's at a tipping point. Robert Sarver is not a good owner. He's not well respected. People don't like him. They love James Jones, and they love Monty Williams. And one of the reasons that was such a good situation was because you had a veteran in Chris Paul come in there and really kind of turn the culture of that team around. But then when brass tacks hit the floor, Chris Paul didn't help you very much.
Yeah.
And so you're in a situation now where, okay, well, are we going to re-sign Chris Paul, or are we going to try and build without him and get back to the NBA Finals? I don't know. There is a lot of rumors about where Chris Paul is going to end up, and not many of them have him in Phoenix.
Yeah, I don't know, man. If I'm the Suns, I'm taking a real hard look at the point guard market. I'm taking a real hard look because I think that while, yes, Chris Paul got you to the NBA Finals with Devin Booker, I think at the same time, Chris Paul's legs are running out, and I think he ran out of gas, with all due respect to Chris Paul. And I think that there are a lot of guys out there that could do some really nice things for you. The problem is you can't really find a guy who's got the intangibles Chris Paul has while also giving you the performance that you need. So that's the really tough part. And that's why, guys like, whether you want to look at Lonzo or any of these other, guys who are available, they may not have the years of experience under their belt, but they definitely have the legs to take you to where you want to go. And I think
for sure.
That to me is the tragedy in what happened in the NBA Finals, because it just felt like, honestly, like, no hate at all, it just seemed like Chris Paul ran out of gas. It just seemed like he was done. And that's just sad.
Sean Mierzinski, good morning to you. He says, morning, everybody. Jeremy Bolton, hey, what's up? Says, top of the morning. But would Conley rather make $25+ million in Cleveland? But he's not going to Cleveland. And this is this is the thing you have to understand. Mike Conley can go wherever he wants to go. He could go to Cleveland if he wanted to, but Cleveland's not going to sign him. Mm-hmm. Mike Conley's going to wind up with a team that believes or is close to a championship. And if you look Mark Cuban, I'll just stay with the Mavericks. Mark Cuban is very aggressive. He is an owner that is involved every day. He is on the recruiting trail. He makes his players off-court money. We know that for a fact because he's a business tycoon. He helps him start record labels and cannabis companies. And so there's a lot of attraction there. And the Dallas Mavericks have been heavily linked to Mike Conley and Kyle Lowry. Now, we also know that Florida has no state income tax, and Kyle Lowry has long been linked to the Miami Heat, who now have the cap space. Anybody notice that Goran Dragic opted into his deal for $19 million? That doesn't mean that the Heat want to keep him. What that means is that they want to sign, Goran Dragic so they can trade him.
Yeah.
And for my money, I really feel like Kyle Lowry winds up in Miami. If he winds up in Miami as a Jazz fan, you should be nervous about that.
Yeah.
Because that means that the Dallas Mavericks have to go to Plan B, and Plan B is Mike Conley.
Well, and I think for Miami, I think that, if you look back to the bubble, they play the Lakers in the NBA Finals. They have a great series. Lakers end up winning. But at the end of the day, Miami's always struggled to have a point guard who can really take them and lead the floor. And I think that would be a great addition for them. So that makes the East even more dangerous than it already is. And then, you look at the Mavericks, and I don't know, man. If I'm Mike Conley, I look at this situation, and I'm like, dude, I got to win a championship, but I also got to get paid. So that really narrows down the options, and it really puts the Jazz in a position where their future with his situation is largely dependent on if he believes that they can go to the NBA Finals. And I'm not so sure that he believes that right now. I don't know.
Well, the bigger question is, do you believe that?
I don't know. I don't think that if he signs there, they're an NBA Finals caliber team. I think they still have a lot of work to do.
I would agree. I just think the hard part is it makes sense to me why the Jazz are so hard after Mike Conley. I think it placates Donovan Mitchell. I get it. But what that also tells me is that you lack courage. And this is the thing that I think is so difficult for teams like the Jazz. Hell, the Bucks. I look at the way the Bucks built that team. I mean, to go out and get guys outside of your sphere, guys like PJ Tucker, guys like Drew Holiday, those guys that ultimately put you over the top in the NBA Finals, that took courage. And to let Mike Conley walk away and believe that you can build a better team without him takes courage. And I just don't know that Ryan Smith is ready to do that. I mean, as a new owner, I think it's very difficult to piss off your fan base. And the Jazz fans have made it very clear that they want Mike Conley back. Now, is that a reason to make a deal like this? I think if you're in the Jazz situation, I think it is. You've failed so miserably for the last 10 years in talent evaluation, and you've brought in guys like Dwayne Wade that have a different voice than this organization has typically heard. I would just encourage the Utah Jazz to be courageous. Show some balls, frankly, and don't do things the way you've always done things. Because Mike Conley, 3 years and however much money, is no different than Derek Favors in his 3-year deal. In that, Mike Conley is always hurt. Now, they're in different arcs. They play different positions. Their value on the ball is completely different. I get that. My point is, if you pay Mike Conley 3 years and $75 million, let's say, because I think that's the going price tag for point guards. I think it's pretty clear that $25 million is going to get you one of the premier point guards on the free agent market. I think it takes a lot of courage to say, no, we're not going to do that, because in 3 years, what's Mike Conley going to be worth for us? And in 3 years, will we have won a championship? And I don't think
so.
you can say yes if you bring him back.
Yeah, I don't think so. And that's the tough part. And that's why I say I think it's smart of them to be steadfast at 3 years and 60 and not budge on that number. I think it has to be a thing where that's the number or you're not coming back. That's what it has to be.
Yeah, and it's scary, frankly. You're in a position where your conversations are, well, are we okay being the 5, 6, 7 this year so that we can win a championship or compete for a championship next season?
Are Jazz fans cool with that? Do we think the fan base is accepting of that? I mean, I'd love to hear that. I mean, do people in the comments think that do Jazz fans in the comments on this show right now, would you be okay with the Jazz being a 5, 6, maybe even a 7 seed going to the postseason this coming year in an effort to save money so that next offseason you can be very aggressive and go after somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. I would hope so. I mean, the problem is, again, and I'm trying not to be redundant with this, but the problem is it's not just the point guard. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, something that Jazz fans are laser focused on, Mike Conley and the point guard, and we've got to get Mike back. And it doesn't matter who you plug into that spot. To me, your depth is a bigger issue. To me, your lack of athleticism, which is why I still advocate that you move Bojan Bogdanovic and Joe Ingles. I'd rather keep Joe Ingles. I'd rather go and get younger and different with Bojan, but they're going to run it back. I think that that's the one thing that I hear consistently is they're going to run it back.
Yeah, I mean, they believe that they could get to a championship, and,
yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's where I think the of course the players believe they could get there. I mean, the players are telling themselves, well, if we didn't get hurt, we would have got there. But I'm telling you that no matter what would have happened, if all things are square, the Clippers are a better team than you. So that's why I'm saying you notice that you made your season on 3 and D, but in the postseason you didn't make your threes except for 1 or 2 games out of like 10 games you played. So that's my biggest issue. I also think there's a lot of value and a lot of traction to be gained if you can add some depth and give Quinn some options when he's coaching. That could potentially lead to several more wins on your schedule because he's able to win games in different ways that weren't available to him last season. So that's another reason I think, even if you don't move anybody else, but you let Mike walk, again, you can save some of that money because, again, the situation they're in is by moving the Favors deal, they gave themselves breathing room in terms of luxury tax. So if he signs the 3-year, $20 million sheet, they're still going to pay like $7-8 million in luxury tax, But if you don't sign him, then we can, if you're committed to spending that money either way, right? Whether you spend it on Mike Conley or you go and spend it on somebody else, if you're committed to paying the $7 or $8 million in luxury tax, that's plenty to go and get a bunch of depth on this bench that you could then do something with. So I'm not saying that if you don't bring Conley back that you can just go out and replace him. But what I am saying is that Quinn Snyder's a hell of a coach, and you've got a couple of pretty good players here. And if you could add some depth to this team, you have some options. And that's, I guess, the route that I would prefer to go. Save money now, be decent, then go after a big-time free agent next offseason. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think that's what most people would do, but it's really hard to make that decision. I don't know. Let's see. James Knights, who cares? Rudy Gay is nothing special. His best is behind him. Do you watch the NBA? Just curious. Jeremy Bolton deleted your message. That just went away. Gage Upwall, good morning to you. Don't think we've ever seen Gage before.
Thanks, Gage.
Welcome to the show, my man. And there's a comment dump, of course. Got his first All-Star appearance with the Jazz. I think it's more about a championship for Mike now. Jeremy Bolton says Conley was a first-time All-Star in the West. Utah is his best fit. I don't know if Utah's his best fit. Depends on what kind of fit you're talking about.
That's an eye of the beholder thing.
Is that fit for a championship? Is that stylistically? Because certainly stylistically, he fits in Dallas. He fits in Miami, the Knicks, the Clippers. I mean, any team that wants to get out and run, and any team that's got half-court assets, Mike Conley fits. So I don't necessarily believe, like one of the teams that I saw was pursuing him a couple of weeks ago was New Orleans. To me, Mike Conley's not a fit in New Orleans. So that's why I kind of write that off. Mike's best fit, to me, is, comfort level, it's probably Utah. Win a championship level, it's probably the Clippers. I just think that depends on what you mean by fit. If Bolton also says if he signs a 3-year deal here, you got to believe the third year is a team option, right? I don't think there's options.
No, I think he wants
3 years guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't think there's option in that. And this is the thing that I think you also have to consider is that when you have competition and you're competing to sign somebody, option years, injury, incentives, games played incentives, those go out the window. And by the way, when you're putting out in the media that you're prioritizing Mike Conley, well, it's hard to say to him, hey, I'll pay you this money, but XYZ, because you've just told the world that Mike Conley's your priority. So I think, I'd love to, I'd love it to be a 2-year deal. Can't be a 2-year deal. Too many people offer him 3. Okay, well, I'd love it to be I'd love to have a team option for the 3rd year. Well, problem is the Knicks will give him 3 years guaranteed, which at this point in his career is far more valuable, I think. There's just all of these variables.
You can't shortcut it, unfortunately. There are a lot of guys you can do that with, but this particular situation, I just don't think it's available to you.
Yeah, I just think it is one of those things where you just have too much competition. Eric and Raleigh says this is where, this is where the Jazz cap problem ties their hands. A little bit, yeah. A little bit, because you've got Rudy's deal and Donovan's deal coming back on the books. And by the way, I look at the Phoenix Suns. I look at the LA Clippers with Kawhi Leonard opting out of his deal. Here's where things are different. Kawhi Leonard opts out of his deal with the LA Clippers to do what? Well, re-sign and get more money from the LA Clippers. Because he knows if he stays in LA, there's no doubt they're competing for a championship.
Yeah.
That's not where Mike Conley is. Mike Conley's in a very different spot. So this is one of those things that if Mike Conley doesn't wind up in a Jazz uniform, I don't think it's the end of the world. If he signs with the Jazz for 3 years and $60 million, I don't think it's the end of the world. Obviously the structure is going to matter.
Yeah.
But $20 million a year for your point guard is not a lot of money in these day and age of the NBA. It just isn't.
Yep.
So I think it's interesting. I look at Kyle Lowry. I think Kyle Lowry wanting a 3rd year and he wants to be paid $30 million. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. Excuse my French. I'm not doing that. I'm not signing him to $30 million a year.
Well, Miami
he's 86 years old.
Miami is. And okay. I think he's proven to be a durable player outside of last year. He's been a pretty durable player in his career.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think it is. Who's the best team in the NBA right now today?
Don't you have to go with Milwaukee?
No, I certainly don't think you do. I still maintain Brooklyn's in that conversation. The Lakers are in that conversation. Milwaukee's in that conversation.
I would love to say Brooklyn and LA, but I need to see that they can stay healthy, bro. Honestly, I need to see that all these guys can stay healthy. I need to see that Kevin Durant and Chris Middleton and Devin Booker and all these guys playing in the Olympics. I need to see that they can stay healthy, because again, it's who's healthy. As we saw, the Jazz weren't healthy, they lost. The Clippers weren't healthy, they lost. Right?
Yeah.
The Suns had some nicks and dings in the NBA Finals, and they lost. So at the end of the day, I think there are teams in the league that can definitely beat the Bucks, but I think the Bucks did a great job of staying healthy. So best team in the league on paper is probably going to be the Lakers, probably. Best team overall, most durable team is the Bucks. That's just how it is.
where do you put the Lakers with Russ? I mean, I and we talked about this on Friday. I actually like that deal a lot for the Lakers. I think that anytime you have a guy going home or going to play with his friends, generally there's already an agreement in place. And we saw that Anthony Davis and LeBron James were both publicly talking to and meeting with Russell Westbrook over the last month or two, and that they dapped up after games. Like, this has been in the works a while. That's why Kyle Kuzma to the Jazz was such a non-factor. But I think Brody knows, Russell Westbrook knows what he's got to do. And that's why, you hear about Carmelo Anthony. You hear about Rudy Gay. What do those guys do? Those guys are knockdown shooters. That's what the Lakers are missing. I think Russell Westbrook gives them incredible quickness and speed and power. The one thing that not a lot of people are talking about right now with Russell Westbrook is the uptick in want to defensively for Russ in Washington was a big reason why they almost made the playoffs, where they got as far as they got. And I think when you look at Russ, I think that's a great pickup for the Lakers. I've thought a lot about this, and in talking to people, there's a strong belief that he is going to, kind of evolve his game a little bit into far less shooting and far more dunking. He is going to attack. There's an expectation that LeBron's going to get a lot more rest, especially now being off the ball. LeBron never has to bring the ball up on this team. And I think that there's a lot of value in that. And I think, yes, you paid a ton of money to get him, and it was a significant trade, there's no doubt. But if you add knockdown shooters like Rudy Gay or Carmelo Anthony, you go and get another wing player in DeMar DeRozan, and these are guys who can command $18 to $22 million on the open market, and they're willing to take like there was talk over the weekend that Carmelo Anthony and DeMar DeRozan were willing to split the mid-level exception for taxpayers that the Lakers have. They're willing to split that to go and win a championship.
Yeah.
They're willing to split the mid-level exception.
I mean, think about
to win a championship,
man. Visualize this in your head, though. Like, think about this. So Russell Westbrook is bringing the ball up.
Yep.
Right. You've got LeBron on the block and AD on the block. Right. And then you've got, let's say, Carmelo standing in the corner and DeMar on the wing. I mean, that is a really flexible lineup. There's a lot you can do with that, And then you got guys, yes, like Rudy Gay coming off the bench and whoever else they're able to bring in on tiny little contracts. So I don't know. I think, for me, the reason that I think Russell Westbrook will make it happen this time is because it's now or never for him. He's no longer young. I mean, it's you're either going to do it now or you're never going to do it.
And by the way, I also happen to be a believer that they're not going to go and get another center. They may go get a backup. They may go and get, a JaVale McGee type.
Yeah.
I think you're going to play Anthony Davis at the 5. And I think you're going to see LeBron James play a hell of a lot more power forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the Rudy Gay, Carmelo Anthony, DeMar DeRozan guy is really important to this roster. I think it's why Talon Horton-Tucker now becomes a vital piece.
Well, look at what they're doing though with their roster. So think about the effect that this has. AD's at the 5.
Yes.
LeBron's at the 4.
Yep.
So what that immediately does is that allows you as an offense to take the size that you would face on any given night away from the rim. And if they want to switch, great. We want them to switch because then you've got a terrible matchup against defending Russell Westbrook, and the rotations for the defense are all messed up. So that's why they're going to this. And yes, getting LeBron off the ball is huge because he can't take that beating anymore. He's past that time in his career. He's no longer that guy anymore. So I think the Lakers are onto something here. However, I do want to say that I don't think that we should just go ahead and say they're the best team in the league or all of a sudden they're the favorite to win the championship.
I'd agree.
They've got to show that they can put this together. They've got to show that Anthony Davis specifically needs to show that he can stay healthy. Anthony Davis needs to figure out what's going on with his groin, what's going on with his leg, what's going on with his arm. All this snagging injury stuff needs to go away. It's time to win a championship over the course of a standard duration NBA season. And once you do that and you prove that you can stay healthy, then I think we should be giving them best team in the league. But right now, I just think that with what the Clippers are doing and whatever. Again, nobody's talking about the Warriors. I'm just telling you, they're going to come out of the middle of nowhere and they're going to light the world on fire. I'm just telling you that right now. So I just think that the West, again, keeping this from the standpoint of like Jazz fans, if you're looking at the West and you're looking at both LA teams, you're looking at the Warriors, and you're looking at the rest of the conference, I think you need to be not concerned, but you need to be very cognizant of the fact that you're not going to be a 1 seed this year. That's not happening. You're going to be a 3 seed ideally, and don't be surprised if you're a 5 or a 6 because we've seen just how damn close the Western Conference gets.
Yeah, and so again, I just look at what some of these guys are doing in the offseason, and that's why, I tweeted this out. You can find me on Twitter, The Monty Show, Monty, The Monty Show, that, you see this big write-up. Chris Brickley, who is the NBA skills coach, does not talk to the media often. When he does, there's purpose behind it. And so today there was a big write-up in a big piece about how Chris Brickley is preparing Donovan Mitchell for the season. And that's not an accident. I think you see Donovan Mitchell working with the who many consider to be the best skills coach in the world, who routinely travels and has people fly into New York, which, by the way, where's Donovan Mitchell these days? He's in New York. He's a New York guy. So you have that relationship in place. I think it's why you see Devin Booker, consulting with a guy named David Alexander, who is the bodywork guru. When you see things like that, don't ignore that. Go follow Chris Brickley on Twitter and Instagram and see who he's working with. Because what happens is you see those guys, Elijah Hughes for the Jazz, spending significant time with Chris Brickley. One of the things that Brickley does every summer is he has all the NBA talent come to New York. And I mean, it's everybody you can think of. Carmelo, look at Carmelo's resurgence. Who is Carmelo's skills coach? Chris Brickley. You have all those guys, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Carmelo Anthony, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell. You have all these guys, Trae Young, go to New York. They live there for 10 days, and they do runs. They play pickup basketball together, and they work on their weaknesses. And so what do you see happen? LeBron's elongating his career. You look at Devin Booker's, maturity over the last 2 years since he paid a bodyworks guy, got a guy to work on his body, and he's working with Chris Brickley in the summers. Now, this summer will be interesting, Jake, because obviously the Olympics has changed quite a bit. So you don't see Chris Middleton and Devin Booker in those pickup games. That's going to be interesting. How many of these Olympians are going to get injured? And I hope not. Knock on wood. I really hope not. It's a lot of wear and tear in a compressed NBA schedule, and now you're in the Olympics. That's a lot of wear and tear. This is the craziest offseason in the NBA that we've seen in some time.
Mm-hmm. It is. Absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah, and I think overall, I think, we had, I can remember on the show, I don't remember specifically, but it was a couple months back now, when we had a big time discussion, and there were a lot of arguments in the comments about load management and these guys playing versus not playing, and like this whole thing. And I think this coming season, load management is going to come to the forefront for a lot of these guys. And I'm not just talking the Olympians. I'm talking about AD. I'm talking about Bron. I'm talking about continuing with Kawhi and, all these guys who understand that they've got to be healthy in the playoffs. I know I keep saying that. If they re-sign Mike Conley, you need to load manage the hell out of Mike Conley early in the year. You've got to cut his minutes down and play him like I'd be right at about 30 minutes a night for Mike Conley, not because he sucks or I want him on the bench, but because I want him healthy.
But the question that I ask of guys like Mike Conley, guys that are always injured, what are you doing in the offseason?
Yeah.
Because you see the guys that go and invest in their bodies. You see guys like LeBron, again, Devin Booker, just because I know what he does. I follow him very quickly or closely. But LeBron, I look at guys like AD, guys like Mike Conley that are always hurt. You don't see them on the social streams of the leading skills coach, the leading bodywork guy, you don't see them in those videos. And it's like, I look at Montrezl Harrell and I see Montrezl Harrell on all of these social media streams. Mm-hmm. And what's he's done? He's gotten better. He's made more money.
Jumper's getting better.
It's not an accident. It was 2 summers ago, I want to say, that he was on David Alexander's social all over the place. And what happened? He became far more explosive. And that's why he's able to, as an undersized center, compete. So I look at a guy like a Mike Conley. Why do we not see him with a bodywork guy? Why do we not see him addressing all of these lower body injuries?
Yeah.
These soft tissue lower body injuries that plague the NBA this year, ankles, knees, hamstrings, quads, groins, all these injuries that you see in these guys, unless you work with like a guru like a David Alexander.
Unless you pay to have somebody build your body.
Because it's an investment. The funny thing is there was a big discussion on one of the Complex magazine. Has a bunch of social channels, and I want to say it was on Complex Sneakers. I was watching a discussion about whether or not skills coaches like Chris Brickley and body guys like David Alexander, whether or not these NBA guys can write that off on their taxes. Because all of these guys, when you're a multi-gazillionaire like most of these guys are, you itemize your taxes. And hell yes, it's a tax write-off. Mm-hmm. Like one of the guys they had on this podcast video thing was one of the leading tax attorneys. And he was like, yes, absolutely. LeBron James every year writes off his body work. Every year he writes off his personal chef. Every year he writes off all this stuff to get him ready for his career. Mm-hmm. And that's why I just don't understand why more guys don't do that. When you're making, think about a guy like Mike Conley last year. He made $34 million, I think, last year.
Yeah.
You need tax write-offs.
Yeah.
Because you're paying Uncle Donnie, Uncle Biden, you're paying that guy 35, 40, 50% of your money at the end of the day. So you need tax write-offs.
Yes, absolutely.
And so to me, there's just no reason not to do this. The money you make in the end,
there's no excuse not to build your body, dude.
But think about it this way. A guy like Mike Conley,
yeah.
If Mike Conley can elongate his career by just one season, that's $20 to $30 million more.
Yeah.
And as the cap keeps pushing up, maybe that 20 to 25 is 23 to 28.
Well, it's what we're seeing in the NFL with quarterbacks.
Yes.
There's a new standard being set seemingly every year for who's the highest paid quarterback. I mean, $50 million a year is no longer outlandish, for quarterbacks. So, I mean, it's that same idea in the NBA.
Yeah. Brandon Whiteside says, the big question is the minivan coming back?
Well,
George Niang has become a punchline at this point. He's become a punchline. Jeremy Bolton says, but who is out there and available? Who is better than Conley in a couple of years? There's not a better than Conley in a couple of years.
It's what you can do with guys on the floor. That's the thing.
Correct.
That's the thing. It's not. We need to stop looking at it from the lens of like, hey, who's better than Mike Conley? Well, I can go in circles about how Lonzo Ball is much faster than Conley in a superior defender. But we all know that Mike Conley is a superior shooter, has a way better sense of pick and roll with Rudy Gobert, and is a fine defender. I mean, so we need to stop saying who's better than Conley. We need to start saying what takes us to the NBA Finals, because at this point, nothing else is acceptable. And that's why I say this whole thing, again, in the, as we have this conversation about Conley and what they're going to do and all these decisions they're making and the inner workings of the organization, we need to be having these conversations with Donovan Mitchell's duration as a Jazz man in mind.
Amen to that.
At some point, you have to be prepared to have the conversation of, hey, guys, I'm not happy. We're not winning. I'm going somewhere else. That's coming at some point if you don't make the right decisions.
And you know what? I point to a guy like Dwight Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we talk about the elongating of careers and making money.
Yeah, he's a great story.
The guy was done, man. And now he is one of the in-demand centers in the NBA.
And how did he do that?
He went to LA and resurrected his career by winning a championship.
On no money, basically. Very, very little money.
Yeah, and now he went to Philadelphia and drew rave reviews for being a tough team guy. Well, he wants to play. And guess where he's going back to? He's going to the LA Lakers again. And they're probably going to, I'm telling you, they're the best team in the NBA.
Well, we'll see.
Maybe,
we'll see.
And to your point, it's not the way they're built today.
Yeah.
But these guys taking discounts, that's the kick in the balls.
It's huge. It takes your dollar 4 miles down the road, it really helps you with team building. But that's why I say I think we just need to be very careful with who's the best team in the league right now, because at the end of the day, yes, the Bucks won the title and yes, they should be called the best team in the league right now, but when I look at the potential of what's about to go down starting at 4 o'clock Mountain Time today, then you start to think about, all right, so the Lakers have LeBron James, Anthony Davis, DeMar DeRozan, Rudy Gay, Dwight Howard, Talon Horton-Tucker. They've got all these guys. The Clippers have all these guys. Dallas signed Mike Conley on a 4-year, gazillion $1 million deal, and now they have Luka and they have a nice little setup. Like 4 o'clock, if you live in Salt Lake City, keep your phone around you at 4 o'clock, please, because I'm telling you, all these deals are already done, and we're going to get a wave of, hey, this, that, and the other just signed this huge deal, and tomorrow on the show has massive potential for the world is ending.
Well, and by the way, one of the other guys I meant to mention that I think is really interesting right now is, and I know it's not a big name, but in the backup center market, Nerlens Noel is somebody that a lot of people are looking at. Rashawn Holmes has to make a decision.
God.
What?
Rashawn Holmes.
But the guy's actually playing good basketball.
He can play. His problem is off the court. That's the issue.
Well, he had one incident off the court.
Well,
and wasn't that a weed thing?
It was a weed thing. He was in a car with 4 other players, and it just.
I think Rashawn Holmes somebody's gonna be lucky to get Rashawn Holmes. And the other guy that I would keep an eye on is Lou Williams. Mm-hmm. I think Lou Williams is going to sign for a title contender, and he's a guy that just gets buckets.
Yeah, dude. I mean, every year Lou Williams. I mean, hell, I don't know how old Lou Williams is now, but every single year in free agency, he's the guy that signs the 1 year, and he's going to come in as an assassin off the bench and just get you buckets. That's what he does.
That's what he does.
And I think I have huge respect for that. I mean, this is Lou Williams is the Jordan Clarkson of the NBA essentially. Like Lou Williams goes to any team that's willing to pay him, who is going to be a playoff team and helps them. That's and it's a great role that he's carved out.
And the other big I think today that's going to get a pretty good payday is Lauri Markkanen. I mean, that's a guy that now the Bulls signed him. He's restricted. They extended him an offer, so he is restricted. I think somebody's going to take a run at him. And he's a guy that's a sign and trade candidate because he is your prototypical defensively. He's weak. He needs to get better defensively, but just amongst the name, there's some bigs out there that depending on your cap situation and where you are as a team, there are some bigs out there. Guys like Nerlens Noel, they're never going to be superstars, but Nerlens Noel is a guy that can contribute in the little ways. Rashawn Holmes is a great number 2 center off your bench.
Who were we all talking about in the NBA Finals who came off the bench? Bobby Portis.
Bobby Portis.
And
gonna get paid, by the way.
Nerlens Noel and all these other names that you were just mentioning are probably, marginally, if not, probably much better than Bobby Portis. But, again, as you were just mentioning before, Bobby Portis went and worked with Chris Brickley and a bunch of these other guys and really remade his game. And that's in guys, whether it's Dwight Howard or Bobby Portis or any of these guys, we're starting to see this trend where guys who don't have a lot of value and they're kind of just floating through life in the NBA start to understand, okay, well, I could go from making like $1.5 to $2 million a year to like $15-16 million a year if I just went and paid Chris Brickley, a couple $1,000 or $50,000 or whatever it is that these guys pay Chris Brickley.
Yeah.
And he can help me. And if I can do that, I'm going to get a lot of value. And teams and guys like Nerlens and, and Lauri Markkanen and all these dudes, that's why you see, so many guys with Brickley and everything else, because there's so much opportunity for them. Contending teams understand, okay, if we can get quality depth to come in and play 8 and 9 minutes at a time, and they can get that one-off rebound or whatever, those are the little plays that take you to the promised land. And to me, again, I know I'm trying to continue to bring this back to the Jazz a little bit. When you look at the Jazz roster, think about this. Who's coming off the bench behind Rudy right now? There's nobody.
There's not.
There's nobody. And I don't want to hear about, Azubuike and what he can do yet. We don't know what he is yet. He needs to prove what he can do. He's still a young guy. So as far as I'm concerned, you don't have anything behind Rudy yet. So that's why I say when he's talking about Nerlens and Lauri Markkanen and all these guys who are available, that's the kind of guy the Jazz should be looking at rather than trying to overextend and sign Mike for $75 million, because my feeling is that's what it's going to take.
Well, and I think you look at some of the other names, that are going to wind up on offer sheets today, guys like Patty Mills. Jeff Green certainly is a guy that there's a lot of people talking about. Jeff Green is in demand. There's just so many of these guys that are out there, and it's a matter of who's got the money. But again, if you're a Jazz fan, if you're a Phoenix Suns fan, I would tell you to really, really pay attention to Kyle Lowry, because if it is done and he is going to end up in Miami, that's going to dramatically change the way that Chris Paul and Mike Conley, are going to do business, because Dallas is expected to spend, and Dallas. I look at New Orleans. New Orleans doesn't want Lonzo Ball back, and Lonzo doesn't want New Orleans back. And I shouldn't say that. Lonzo doesn't want to go back to New Orleans. He has told people, quote, he's done.
He wants to play somewhere legit.
Yeah.
I don't blame him.
Yeah. So there's so many fluid moving pieces. And if you're just tuning into the show, I see that a lot of people have popped on. But if you're just, tuning into the show right now, like the one thing that we're talking about with Mike Conley, 3 years and $60 million doesn't seem to be legit. Because you look at the money that, guys like Lowry are going to get. I think there's going to be multiple suitors for Mike Conley. And this is why, if I am who's another opt-out guy, a Kawhi Leonard. If I'm a Clipper fan, I'm a little nervous. I think the Clippers are going to re-sign Kawhi Leonard, no doubt. He's going to go and meet with other teams. He's going to listen. Because that's what all these guys do. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason not to, because none of these guys believe in leaving money on the table. Let me get some of your comments. Bless you all for being here today. I really appreciate everybody piping up. Eric and Raleigh, good morning to you. Brandon Whitesides, good morning to you. Appreciate you very much. Jordan, I think this is your first appearance on the show. I'd be ecstatic with that, 3 years and 60.
Well, yeah,
I think a lot of people would.
I think we all would. The problem is, my biggest concern is I don't think that that's going to be good enough to get it done, because I don't think Mike Conley wants to be a Jazz man bad enough to take a hometown discount. But we'll see. Actions, speak louder than words, and I think at 4 o'clock we'll get the answer. Honestly, I do.
Rudy Sanchez, good morning to you. See your options for Gobert and other assets at the trade deadline. See, that's not how this Jazz team is going to go about it. Rudy Gobert, granted, signed an extension under the previous regime and ownership. Ryan Smith nodded his head at that deal, from everything I understand. But you're not going to trade Rudy Gobert this year. I think he's here. He's not eligible to be traded. I think the date's October 12th.
I don't think you're trading Rudy Gobert in the next 2 seasons.
Oh,
I don't think that that's happening.
I don't know about that. I think you're on a year-to-year watch with Rudy Gobert. The problem is he's making so much damn money that it's hard to trade that contract. But right now, I think you're bringing this core back. I think you're paying close attention to what you're doing with Mike Conley, because if he does not sign here, you have some room now under the tax threshold because of the favors trade. But, it'll be interesting to see exactly how all of that ends up. But, I mean, if you continue to see Rudy Gobert get exposed and not develop offensively, you're
not going to have a choice. I agree with that.
I just don't think you can keep doing what you've always done, because that's what's gotten you to where you are. So it's not as simple as just throwing the trash out.
Yeah.
Right? It's not as simple
as,
well, hey, let me just call my friends in Poughkeepsie and trade Rudy Gobert. Who's got $40 million a year under their cap to go and get that?
For a big.
Right? I mean, are you really going to – you can't just trade that for a draft pick like the favors deal. I mean, it's really complicated to make a trade of that level, in my opinion. Mitchell Harding says Gobert and Conley just have that connection. No point in taking it away. But what does that connection get you?
Well, here's my thing, and I agree with that. That's a great question, 100%. But I also think a question needs to be, if they had that connection, and they do have that connection, I agree with that. But where is that connection in the postseason? Where is that connection in meaningful games? I mean, I even look back to and go and find the highlights on YouTube. Again, I know I'm always the guy on the show saying that, but go and find it. Go rewatch it. I specifically remember talking about on this show the day after the loss in Philly, when I was over here and we were both pissed off that they didn't win that game. I remember saying, "Dude, where's the pick and roll? Where's Gobert dunking on Embiid? Oh, that's right, it didn't happen because Embiid was dominating that matchup." So I think mentally they were taken out of that. And then I go to the postseason. And I'm like, man, even against Valanciunas in Memphis, an easy series by most people's standards, we didn't really see the pick and roll all that much. I mean, yeah, a couple times a game, but this is the pick and roll between Conley and Gobert. It's not like they based their whole offense off of that. So when we talk about, they have that connection, yeah, I agree they have the connection, but what good is the connection if they never use it? And my point just simply is, even if you do bring Conley back, and even if it is 3 years in 60, 20 million a year, which it would be a very team-friendly deal, even if you get that done, I still don't think that you're a championship caliber team based on the fact that the Lakers are going to get better, the Clippers are going to get better, the Warriors are coming back. You look at Kyle Lowry, it's like 85% by most people's standards is going to Miami, so they're going to be really good. So you look at all these other teams and you start to say, okay, no offense to Donovan Mitchell, but you're not Kawhi Leonard. You're not Paul George. You're not there yet.
Not yet.
And so that's why I say it's not like this team has that guy and then you can be okay with Conley.
Yeah, and the other thing is I don't think Donovan Mitchell's that recruiter yet either. He's not at that.
You got to win to do that.
Yeah.
You have to win.
Yeah, Eric and Raleigh says if the Warriors can get one of the draft picks to play defense like Iguodala did, okay, well, good luck with that. They will be in the discussion for best team. I think you're so far away from the Warriors being best team simply because you don't know what Klay Thompson is.
Yeah.
And I think you don't know how that group's going to fit together. And Draymond's been really durable, but again, he's another one of those Olympic guys. I'd tell you to watch out for those guys injury-wise. I just think you have a lot of variables. There's a lot of things up in the air on the Dubs. All things being equal and everything works out and everybody stays healthy. Well, when you have Draymond, Steph, and Klay, you're always going to be one of the best teams in the league.
And I think that's definitely what I'm looking at. I mean, I'm obviously making the assumption that Klay Thompson is back to who he was, and really, I'm only making that assumption because of how well Durant's done coming off the Achilles. I think he's redefined what our expectations are of guys coming off the Achilles.
ACLs, and I look at Zach LaVine with an ACL. I look at, just the way those surgeries go now. Technology's just come so far.
Yeah.
By the way, Zach LaVine's another guy.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on his situation in Chicago. They're a dumpster fire every year. So he made some comments today about wanting an extension, and I'd be real careful with that.
Team, you got to get paid.
I'd be real careful with that. Red Heart Norvis says, best team on paper is Nets. Lakers will have better longevity over load management for having Westbrook. Best fit for Conley is the Mavs. There's no and that's my point. The best pure basketball fit for Mike Conley is the Dallas Mavericks. The way they're very fluid and mercurial with their basketball. Mike is so damn creative in his ability to finish left or right. I mean, he just fits in that flow.
Mm-hmm.
And when Luka's getting double teamed, Mike's an elite 3-point shooter. So I think he's a great fit there. Ryan Buckley says if Conley really wanted to chip, he would be honest with himself and take less. Yeah. Not from the Jazz, because I'm telling you. So
we just disagree.
Yeah, if you want to win a championship in 2022, a year from now, you want to be holding the NBA championship Larry O'Brien trophy, you'd sign with the Utah Jazz. Really? I don't think you would. I think that's an awfully difficult argument to make. Where we sit right now, that's an awfully difficult thing to make.
Yeah.
Austin Lewis says, do the Jazz regret waiving Jeff Green? Who knows?
That's so many years ago.
It was so many years ago.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. The Suns should hope Chris Paul declines that $44 million option, Eric says. Well, he already did. That's official. Dop Hop says, I hope Lonzo ends up happy in Chicago. 3 years, $60 million sounds like pie in the sky. It does sound like pie in the sky.
It does.
I just don't see how that's even a possibility. Tanner Plummer, do the Jazz ownership management really believe Conley is going to stay healthy? Historically, the Jazz don't load manage.
No.
Well, but historically, nobody load manages. That's something that's relatively new. Kawhi started that in San Antonio, Toronto, and continued that in L.A. I think you have to load manage. I don't, especially with your older veterans. Brandon Butler, do you think all of this chaos in the NBA is a result of parity? Are we seeing parity? I mean, is the NBA even? I don't think it's even.
The West is superior to the East. I don't think anybody doubts
Well,
that.
and I think the top of the Western Conference is who it's always been.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Lakers and the big spenders.
Yeah.
And the Jazz are an anomaly, but it's cool you did that in the regular season. You didn't do it in the postseason. So I think that the West is the way it's always been. I mean, the big spenders and the major market teams have the advantage. I think you saw a perfect set of circumstances lead to Milwaukee winning a championship.
And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do feel like on some level the Jazz have some proving to do this coming season. Like they have to prove that.
Why
they're
is that
legit.
odd?
Well, because I just think that, when you're a 1 seed and you dominate the way they did in the regular season, it's a foregone conclusion that you'll continue to be that. But with Conley not being here and the way they went out in the postseason, I think there were a lot of doubters, and I think there were a lot of people who started to understand, this team was built off the 3-ball, and that's not going to win you an NBA championship.
Yeah. Jack T says, per reports, it's $75 million for 3 years. I haven't seen that report. So nobody has a number on Mike Conley. Like we
Nobody's reporting that the Jazz are offering him 75.
Nobody is reporting that.
Yeah.
Nobody. Corey Grocock, what's up? He said, what could Utah sign off the bench in free agency? Not a lot right now. I mean, you're really kind of waiting on Mike Conley.
And this is the problem. And this is why I say I feel like right now, if they took a little bit different of an approach, they'd have an opportunity right here. Think about it this way. Let's just pretend that the Utah Jazz said, we're just going to let him walk. We're not going to offer him anything. Go ahead. Go get paid. You can go play for another team. Well, what does that do for you? Now, all of a sudden, your outlook is completely different. Now you're like, okay, hey, we got to fill out our bench here. We ideally we'd find another player to be in our starting 5. Like we're gonna have to fill those gaps, and we can still do it for the most part under the luxury tax. You're still going to pay luxury tax this year, but it's not going to be like $25 million in luxury tax. It's going to be like 7 or 8 or less than 10. So my point just is like with this whole Mike Conley thing, it's not just about whether they sign or re-sign him. It is the implications of putting a ton of time and effort into figuring out what you can get done with Mike Conley. Because if you are worrying about Mike Conley, you'd be worrying about signing, Lonzo Ball or like any of these other guys, the Nerlens Noels of the world or any of these other dudes.
You'd be looking to put Donovan with a point guard for 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
That's what you'd be looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just not where you're at. I don't think. Ryan Buckley says Jazz were built for the regular season, not to playoffs. Correct.
Yep.
Any chance Otto Porter? Why are Jazz fans so obsessed with Otto Porter?
Every year, people get obsessed with Otto
Porter. Where has Otto Porter been an integral figure in anybody's team?
Well, Washington.
Well, and what happened? Nothing. He went to Chicago, and what happened? Nothing. Like Otto Porter is a nice guy, but it's the Kelly Oubre, obsession.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Phoenix is going to win, and then they didn't. And he left, and Chris Paul came in, and what happened? They won. He goes to Golden State. They've declined. He's gone. Like, I'm telling you, there are these cool, chic guys. Otto Porter doesn't bring you a championship. What does Otto Porter do that you don't already have?
Nothing.
Maybe a little bit of an upgrade defensively, but he's not a better three-point shooter than anybody you got.
Jazz have a lot of guys on this roster who are really good at getting paid.
I just don't. I don't know. I don't understand the obsession with Otto Porter. I've never understood that.
It's weird. He's a role player, man. He's nothing he's not some great player.
Jeremy Bolton, well, this is the point of the day. Can the Jazz do a sign and trade for Luka's mom?
Well,
now you're talking. By the way, anybody see Luka Doncic last night in the Olympics getting a technical foul and yelling at the officials like an idiot?
Mm-hmm. That's what he does.
Because I'll drop that motherfucker.
Yeah,
I am not a Luka guy. I am not a fan at all.
Conley is.
I mean, well, apparently. But I at some point, you just have to shut up and play. Just shut up and play. Like, I just...
It gets old. No doubt. It gets old.
Very old. 3:30 Eastern today. I actually think it's 4 o'clock Mountain, excuse me.
Yeah, it's 4 o'clock Mountain.
Is when free agency opens.
By the way, since we have Grocock in the comments, just would like to say, bro, we sent your shipment out yesterday, and it cost me my entire savings account.
My God. Last time we ever, A, go to the post office at Harmon's, B...
Yeah, dude. It was bad.
It was expensive to ship to Australia. You're welcome. We appreciate you being here. We love Australia. So we sent Corey his Xbox yesterday. I might be homeless to pay for that shipping. I mean...
You have a deal.
I mean,
Yeah, man, it was heavy, but it's fine.
you enjoy that Xbox, but we'll be on the street. It's fine. If we're doing this, if one day we show up on this show in a tent, just understand it's Corey Grocock's fault. It's not my fault.
After the street closed Davis.
Exactly right. Blue Money 93 Neville.
Okay.
If the Jazz don't re-sign Mike Conley, you don't think we can go for DeRozan? Well, because you can't reallocate his money. You're going to resign him with bird rights. So, and now you're not, well, you wouldn't be a luxury tax payer at that point. I think DeMar DeRozan wants to be an LA Laker. Well, I don't think, I know
yeah.
he wants to be an LA Laker.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan
Again,
is
he
not
wants to play
available
for,
to
He
you.
wants to play for a championship, with
Yeah.
all due respect.
You know. Jeremy Bolton says, I could have picked up that Xbox from you guys for free. By the way, if you're just tuning in,
Yeah.
we did announce our newest giveaway,
Yeah.
which is a Traeger smoker package. We're going to give away a Traeger smoker, an Ironwood. We're going to give you pellets. We're going to give you kind of an accessory set, some seasoning. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be all good, you know?
We're going to do that at 2,500 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
And all you have to do is what you've always had to do. Subscribe, take a picture, tweet, Insta, or TikTok, The Monty Show, this guy, or SLC Supercars for Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Tag us. You have to tag us both. We've let some of the single guys slide. No more. If you want to win the Traeger smoker.
Yeah, this is a little bit too official to have any of the single guys be.
No, it's going to cost us too much money.
Yeah.
So the single guys, nah, man, we ain't doing that.
Yeah.
You have to take a picture that you're subscribed to this channel. Tag us both. Jake is SLC Supercars on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I am The Monty Show, MONTY The Monty Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Tag us both.
Yeah, not just one.
Douche.
Douche